talking with attendees at the Kabbalah conference, Terence Imoma, welcome, and Owen Zhou from Beijing. You're Terence from the Cameroons.
Yes.
You've come an awful long way. You've come only to attend this conference?
Yeah, it's a big event. It's a big event and very important for me and for the world, and it was necessary for me to come and join my friend to work with them.
It's customary to think of Kabbalah as aimed for Jews, and yet many non-Jews are attending this conference, like yourself. Yeah. Owen, what brings you here?
Yeah, I think it's a quite a big question, actually. You know, in my life, there's at some point you're looking for something you cannot find satisfied in this world, like money, fame, and power, etc. So we in Kabbalah we call the point in the heart. So we look searching for what the meaning behind it. Otherwise, there's no reason to live anymore. So that's, we call it, okay, you are searching for the meaning of life. That's the ultimate question.
And you're getting this from Kabbalah, meaning and purpose, and why you're here?
Yeah, right. Okay, I'm from China. China, they say we have also 5,000 years wisdom, culture, history, and also, of course, I search a lot from philosophy, China culture, Buddhism, and I've been Christian also.
And yet you find more answers, more solutions, more meaning in Kabbalah.
Yeah. In other teaching, there's great wisdom also, but there's certain links. It cannot connect it. You have question mark, but they don't give you answers.
And
Only
you find
Kabbalah.
answers in Kabbalah.
Yes.
How about you, Terence? What's your quest and what's your background?
Since I was young, I was searching for why I am there, what is the purpose of the life, what is the meaning of the life. And I have read a lot of books, studied a lot of science, wisdom, and I have found Kabbalah and Nebaru, and yeah, it's the answer of what it was I was searching for a very long time. I find the answer and the solution in the Kabbalah.
Have you studied other forms of religion or other forms of philosophy?
I have studied Buddhism, the Asian philosophy. I was also very religious Christian before, but I couldn't answer to this question, why I am there, what is the purpose of this life.
And Kabbalah does that for you.
And the Kabbalah gave me the answer, yes.
Thank you both very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
My guest today claims that he has a solution for the world's crisis, that the world is in crisis. You don't need to be an expert to know, on an economic level, on a personal level, on a political level. He claims he has a solution, and Kabbalah is the foundation of the solution. Meet Dr. Michael Laitman, who will talk to us through a translator because he speaks Russian and Hebrew. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's regarded as one of the world's foremost authorities on Kabbalah. He has live lessons broadcast around the world daily on the internet and on TV, and he's founder of the B'nai Baruch Kabbalah Education and Research Institute. Now here's the what appears to be a contradiction. He's also a highly trained scientist. He got a PhD in philosophy and Kabbalah at Moscow University, and he is considered one of the wise men by Jews and non-Jews, to the extent that he predicted the 2008 financial crisis and its current reemergence, as well as the recent uprisings in Europe and the Middle East. Now, the reason for his trip to North America was that you met for a meeting with the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Dr. Asha Rose Magiro, September 12th. Now, what did you talk about with her?
יש לנו על מה לדבר הרבה.
We had a lot to talk about.
במסגרת המכון שלנו,
As part of our institute,
אנחנו נמצאים גם כן ביונסקו,
we are also in touch
בעבודה
with
משותפת
UNESCO,
בחינוך העולמי,
working on global education,
וגם כן עם האו"ם. זה לא
and
פגישה
with the
ראשונה
UN.
שלנו.
It's not our first meeting with them.
אנחנו נמצאים במקומות האלו,
We've been in touch with
בארגונים האלו,
them.
וכל הדיבור שלנו הוא איך אנחנו
And
נביא
what we talk
לעולם
about is how to bring
את
to the world
החינוך החדש.
the new kind of education.
שאנחנו נמצאים עכשיו במצב
Now we're in a situation
של משבר הכללי,
where there's a general crisis,
והוא דורש מאיתנו
and it
לשנות את
requires
האדם,
of us to change
להכין את
ourselves,
עצמנו
to prepare ourselves
לעולם החדש
to the new
שעכשיו
world
נפתח.
that's now appearing.
Your message is not just for Jews, though. At
ודאי
this
שלא.
I know you're touring North America, and you're here in Toronto at a convention, and we have just met some of your participants, one from China and one from the Cameroons. Traditionally, Kabbalah has been geared to Jews.
לא, מה קבלה היא לאו דווקא לא
No,
ליהודים.
Kabbalah is actually
זה לא-
not for Jews.
זה לא דת.
It's not a religion.
הקבלה היא מגיעה לנו מבבלי עתיקה.
Kabbalah comes from ancient Babylon.
שהכהן, אחד מהכהנים הבבליים,
One of the Babylonian priests, whose name was Abraham,
גילה את הקבלה,
discovered Kabbalah
כי השיטה שבה כולם צריכים
As a
להתחבר יחד,
method
כל האנושות,
for the whole of
כמו
humanity
משפחה אחת,
to unite as a family.
ובזה בעצם הוא הגיע
by
לנוסחה
that,
ואהבת לרעך כמוך.
He found the formula, love your friend as yourself.
והוא פנה לכל
You mean
הבבלים.
it goes back as far as Abraham?
זה הולך עד לאברהם הנוסחה הזאת?
כן, כן, אברהם הוא ייסד
Yeah.
את ה...
Abraham established
שיטת הקבלה.
the method of
וכתב ספר
Kabbalah.
בקבלה שנקרא...
He wrote a Kabbalah book called Book of Creation, ספר יצירה.
ואברהם הוא בעצם לקח
Abraham
מכל הבבלים
basically took from among all the
קבוצה
Babylonians
קטנה
a small group
שהסכימה לרעיון שלו,
that agreed to his
והלך
ideas
איתם מבבל,
and
לארץ
left
כנען.
Babylon with them to the land of Canaan.
ומזה בא עם ישראל.
And that's where the
מאותה
people of
קבוצה של
Israel comes
אברהם.
from Abraham's group.
זה היה סתם אנשים שהתחברו אליו,
There was just people who
מכל
connected to him
העם הבבלי
from
העתיק.
the ancient Babylonian people.
אנחנו לא כמו שכל העמים
We're not
שגדלו
like other
באיזשהו
nations
מקום אחד,
that evolved in a certain location
ממשפחה אחת.
out of a certain family.
אנחנו בסך הכל מהבבלים,
We come from the Babylonians,
וככה זה כתוב בתורה.
and it's written in the Torah.
אז קבלה היא בעצם, כמו שאברהם רצה,
So Kabbalah,
רצה בעצם כל הבבלים,
as
כל
Abraham wanted
העולם
it,
אז,
he wanted the
לחנך
whole of the
אותם
Babylonians, the
בצורה
whole of the ancient world,
אחידה,
to
שהם
educate
חברו
them
יחד,
in a uniform way, so they all
ושמעו
unite.
אותו רק חלק קטן מהאנשים.
But he was heard by only a few.
אבל בסופו של דבר כתוב לכל הספרי הקבלה,
But in the
שאנחנו
end,
צריכים להגיע,
all the Kabbalah
דווקא
books
בזמננו,
say
בסוף
that we
המאה
have to
ה-20,
achieve, particularly at the end of the 20th century,
למצב שכל העולם שוב יתחבר,
to come to a point where the whole world
סביב כל כדור
unites
הארץ,
around the whole world.
שאנחנו
That
נרגיש
is
את
going to
עצמנו-
happen in the 20th century?
וזה היה כתוב שזה יקרה במאה ה-20?
כן, כן.
Yeah.
ושאנחנו נצטרך שוב
And that we would
לחשוב
have
על החיבור
to
בינינו.
And this was predicted
rethink the
5,000 years
union
ago?
between us. וזה נחזה לפני 5,000 שנה?
כן.
Yeah.
והכל מה שהיה במשך 5,000
Everything,
שנה,
as
כתוב
well as
בחומת הקבלה,
everything
והכל
that's happened during
התקיים.
the 5,000 years is
אז
written in
אנחנו
Kabbalah.
נמצאים עכשיו
The
בזמן המיוחד.
Holocaust?
So, היה שואה גם כן?
לא, דברים כאלה לא.
Not things like
אם
that.
היינו שומעים מה שחומת הקבלה אומרת,
If we heeded what Kabbalah
היו עוברים
suggests,
דברים האלה בשלום,
then these things wouldn't happen. Things would be a lot more peaceful.
ולא במצבים כאלו.
Now we wouldn't have to go through such tragic situations.
Well, what you say, you wrote almost 2,000 years ago, the book of Zohar said, humanity's darkest time will come right before its spiritual awakening, at the end of the 20th century, and they called it the last generation.
Just a second, I'll translate. כתבת שספר הזוהר כתוב שיבוא העת הכי חשוך לפני ההתעוררות הגדולה, וזה יהיה בסוף המאה ה-20. And what?
They
ושזה
call it the
יקרה
last
הדור האחרון.
generation, but we're going to take a break and come back to this right away. Stay
נחזור
with
לזה
us.
אחרי
Dr. Laitman, I want to go back because it's very important, very crucial, because your message is reaching thousands, maybe millions of people. You wrote that the Zohar, the book of Zohar, 2,000 years ago, said humanity's darkest time will come right before its spiritual awakening at the end of the 20th century.
זה מה שאנחנו מגלים לאט לאט היום.
That's what we're gradually discovering today.
And it's called the last generation.
זה נקרא הדור האחרון?
כן.
Yeah.
דור האחרון הכוונה היא
The
שלא
last
הכל
generation
נגמר.
doesn't mean that it's all over.
זה דור האחרון של האגואיסטים
It's
שהתפתחו.
the last generation
וצריכים
of
לעבור עכשיו
egoists
למצב
that
הבא.
have evolved and now have to shift to a new state.
זה דור
So
האחרון
up till now, we've been egoists.
אז עד עכשיו היינו אגואיסטים,
ודאי.
And that has
Of
been
course.
our downfall.
וזה המגרש שלנו, מה שמפיל אותנו.
ודאי, אנחנו עכשיו לכן
Of
לא
can't
יכולים להסתדר.
That's why we
בעולם
can't get
החדש
along in the new world
שמתגלה.
now.
מתגלה
That's
עכשיו
appearing.
קשר חדש בין
A
בני
new kind
אדם.
of connection among people
מצב
is
הגלובלי,
appearing now.
אינטגרלי,
A global and
ואנחנו לא
integral
מתאימים
state.
עליו.
And we're not in sync with it.
לכן אנחנו לא יודעים
This is
עכשיו
why we don't know
לעסוק נכון בשום דבר
how to
שבחברה
do
האנושית. לא
anything
בחינוך
now in the
ולא
human society, how to
בתרבות, לא
succeed
בחיי
in it.
משפחה, אנחנו
Education,
מתגרשים
culture,
בדיפרסיה
family life, we get
נמצאים,
divorced, there's
אנחנו
depression,
בטרור,
there's terrorism,
אנחנו נמצאים במשבר פיננסי,
there's a financial crisis,
בכל דבר, במשבר אקולוגי,
ecological crisis.
בכל דבר שאדם עוסק,
In every
היום הוא
area
נמצא
of
במשבר.
human engagement,
And this was
there's a
predicted?
crisis.
This was
זה
predicted?
נחזה על ידי הקבלה.
כן, ודאי,
Yeah, of course.
ודאי.
And just to be hope, as we get into the depths of despair, it's also, you also wrote that it was predicted
וגם
that the
כתבת
beginning of the 21st century
נחזה
would
שם
bring us
שבתחילת
spiritually
המאה ה-20,
higher.
שנעלה לרמה רוחנית
כן,
גבוהה יותר.
נכון.
Yeah.
כי אם אנחנו יודעים איך האגו
Because
שלנו
if
כל
we
הזמן
know
גודל
how
מדור
our
לדור,
ego grows from
איך
generation
אנחנו
to
מתקדמים
generation,
מדור
how we
לדור,
advance from
אז
generation to
גם כן
generation,
יש לנו
then we
מתוך
also,
זה נקודה
as a
איפה
result,
שאנחנו מגיעים
have
לזה
a point
שהאגו שלנו מתחבר יחד.
where our
שאנחנו
egos connect,
סביב כל כדור הארץ
where
מתחילים להיות
around
מחוברים
the world we
למנגנון
become
אחד.
connected into a single
כשאנחנו
system,
התחברנו
mechanism.
למערכת גלובלית
That's the
ואינטגרלית.
hope,
connected
or that's
into
the
an-
prediction?
זה התקווה או זה התחזית?
לא, זה עכשיו מה שקורה.
That's what's happening
אנחנו
now.
תלויים זה בזה.
We're interdependent.
כמו באפקט הפרפר.
Take the
זה-
butterfly effect.
למה אנחנו קוראים למשבר הזה גלובלי?
Why do we call this crisis
כי
global
הוא
crisis?
ממש מקשר אותנו יחד.
Because it connects all
אבל
of us
אנחנו
together.
אגואיסטים, לא יכולים להיות
But we're
מחוברים נכון.
egoists. We can't be connected in the
וזה
right way.
המשבר.
And that's the crisis.
ולצאת ממנו אנחנו לא מסוגלים,
And we can't resolve
אלא
it
אך ורק
unless
בתנאי שאנחנו נתחיל
we
לשנות את הטבע
begin to
שלנו
change our own nature.
לנתינה, להשפעה.
But
into
what's
giving
happening in
and
the
to
world
step.
sounds contrary to what you're
אבל
saying.
מה שקורה בעולם
If
נשמע
anything,
הפוך ממה שאתה אומר.
we're
מה?
breaking apart, we're
אנחנו רק
descending into
נפרדים,
tribalism.
אנחנו נופלים לשבטיות וכזה.
ולכן אנחנו
And that is
רואים
why
שהמשבר עוד ועוד
We
ועוד
can see
מתרחב
that the
יותר
crisis
ויותר
is
ומחמיר.
even expanding and exacerbating.
ובסופו של דבר אנחנו נגיע
And in the
למצב
end,
שאנחנו
we'll come
נראה
to
שאי
a point
אפשר
where
ככה
we see
להתקיים.
that we can't go on living
אלא
this way.
חייבים לשנות את הטבע שלנו.
But we have to change our natures.
Okay, here's the magic question. And how do we change our nature to go from being egoistic to on a higher level, which is altruistic?
הכל תלוי בחינוך.
How do we
It's all
do
up to
that?
education.
הכל תלוי בחינוך.
Education,
ולכן
it's all up to it.
אנחנו מגיעים ועובדים יחד עם
This is why
יונסקו,
we
עם
work with
האו"ם,
UNESCO, with the UN,
ומקבלים אותנו מאוד טוב.
and we're welcome
דרך אגב.
there, by the way.
ומבינים אותנו.
They understand us.
רק אין להם גם כן מספיק
Except
כלים
they too
כדי
don't have enough
לבצע את זה.
instruments
אבל
to
שומעים.
execute it. But they do listen.
אנחנו איתם ביחסים יפים מאוד,
We
טובים
have a
מאוד
very
של
good
עבודה.
relationship.
All right, could you be
Work
more
relationship.
specific?
אתה יכול להיות
Education is
specific?
the answer. Everybody says education is the answer.
כן.
זה התשובה הכי
נכון.
I just witnessed a documentary about
ראיתי
UNRWA
עכשיו סרט על אונר"א.
from the UN
נכון.
and how they're propagating
ואיך
hatred and terror
איך בעצם מפיצים
in their refugee
שנאה
camps.
וטרור במחנות הפליטים.
זה הכל בסדר, זה הכל נכון. אבל אנחנו מדברים
That's
על
all true, but
החינוך.
we're talking about
לא לילדים.
Not education for kids.
אנחנו מדברים על
We're
חינוך
talking about
למבוגרים,
education
לאנשים,
for
לכל
grown-ups,
העולם.
for the whole world.
שאנחנו צריכים לעשות חינוך
We
גלובלי.
need to create global education,
להפוך את האנשים
turning people
לחברים בצורה ידידותית, שהם הבינו שהם תלויים זה
so they
בזה.
become friendly towards each other because they understand that we are mutually dependent. In a system where everyone is dependent on everyone else, you can't deal with protectionism, and isolationism, because by that you ruin yourself. And that's
So what is there
Kabbalah
in
explains.
Kabbalah, and what specific
As my
steps
Kabbalah
do you recommend
is that tzaddim specific
through Kabbalah?
היא מסבירה לנו איך אנחנו צריכים
Kabbalah
לבנות
explains how we should
את
build
מערכת החינוך,
the
מערכת
education
ההשפעה על
system,
בני אדם,
the system of influencing people,
שאנחנו נגיע למצב שהם באמת ישתנו.
to bring us to a point where they actually do change.
כי בלי זה אנחנו לא נוכל
Because
לשרוד.
without it, we won't be able to survive.
אנחנו מגלגלים ועכשיו
We somehow kind of
למצבים עוד ועוד יותר
are
גרועים.
approaching far worse
בחוכמת הקבלה
situations.
כתוב שהמצב הזה הוא בלתי
And the
הפיך.
wisdom of Kabbalah says that this
אם
situation is
אנחנו לא נשתנה,
irreversible, and that if we don't change,
הוא יותר ויותר ויותר
nature
מאתגר
will
בינינו.
close in on us,
ואז אנחנו נרגיש מצבים יותר
and then
גרועים.
we will feel the situations getting even worse in the crisis in every area.
So you propose to take
אתה
Kabbalah
מציע לקחת את
and put
הקבלה
it in
ולשים
millions
את זה
of homes,
במיליוני בתים,
in millions of...
מיליוני...
Actually, that's what you're doing with your
בעצם מה שאתה
lectures.
עושה עם ההרצאות שלך.
אנחנו כך עושים, יש לנו כשתי
Well, that
מיליון
is what we do.
תלמידים
We have
מכל העולם,
approximately 2 million students worldwide.
ואנחנו כך פועלים.
That's
2
what we do.
million students?
יש. בכל העולם.
All over the world.
אנחנו עושים כאלה כנסים כמו שעכשיו
We
בטורונטו.
have conferences like this one in Toronto all over the world.
וכך זה יש, אבל זה 2 מיליון תלמידים, זה
But the 2 million students
הם כמורים.
are
Okay, we'll be back.
דרך לכל
We'll
האנושות.
finish this thought when we come back and more. Stay with us. We're speaking with Dr. Laitman, internationally renowned Kabbalist who has the solution for the world's problems. But back to you personally and how you came to this point in your life. You were born in Belarus
Yes.
to parents who were not religious.
No.
Typical Jewish people of that time. Very few people were religious.
אני נולדתי במשפחה אינטליגנטית.
I was born to a family
גם
of
אמא וגם
intellectuals.
אבא רופאים.
Both mother and father are doctors.
גדלתי כרגיל,
I
כמו
grew up
כל ילד
like
יהודי.
any other Jewish boy.
בוודאי ללא שום קשר לשורשים שלנו.
No connection to our roots.
בצורה מודרנית.
You know,
הלכתי
contemporary
לאוניברסיטה,
boy. Went to
למדתי
university.
ביוקיברנטיקה.
I started biocybernetics.
ורציתי לגלות סוד החיים.
I wanted to discover the
לכן
secret
הלכתי
of life.
למקצוע הזה.
That's why I chose this
כי היא
profession.
מדברת על מערכות גוף האדם,
Because it talks about
כל
the
הסודות של גוף
systems
האדם.
of the human organism.
דרך זה אני אגיע
I thought that
למצב,
through it,
לתשובה.
I'll find the answer. You know, what are we living for?
המהות
Why we live?
So even
Yes,
then,
it's
as a young
אפילו אז,
person, you were interested in why we're here, in existence and
עניין
meaning.
אותך הקיום והמשמעות של זה?
למה לא?
כן.
אני
Oh,
נמצא
why
בהתחלת
not?
החיים, אני
You
צריך
know, it's the
לדעת
beginning of
בשביל
my
מה אני
life.
חי.
I have to know what I'm living for.
ואז ראיתי שאני לא מוצא בזה
So
כלום.
then I saw I couldn't
אבל
find
הייתי
anything
כמדען
in
המתחיל.
it. But I was
בכל
a
זאת,
beginning, you know, aspiring
שואל,
student.
ואז אני התחלתי
I
לחפש
was asking
הלאה, איפה
questions.
אני יכול להגיע.
But then I continued to search where I could find it.
הגעתי לישראל.
So I arrived in Israel
בשנת
eventually.
1974,
It was 1974.
והתחלתי לחפש שם,
And I started searching in Israel.
ואמרו לי שכנראה זה
I
נמצא
was told
בדת.
it's probably in religion.
התחלתי להתעניין בדת וראיתי
I
שזה
started
לא
taking interest in
מדובר
religion,
על
and I saw
שום דבר חוץ
that
מלהאמין
it
וזהו.
talked about
לקבל
nothing
מה
except
שכתוב.
believing, you know, accepting what's
וזה אני
written.
לא מוכן.
And that was not for me. I wasn't
רוצה לדעת
ready for
ולהאמין.
that. I want to know, not believe.
ואז התחלתי הלאה להמשיך,
So I
המשכתי הלאה,
continued
עד שהגעתי
on
אחרי 4 שנים.
Until it took me 4 years.
למקובל, למורה
I
שלי,
arrived at, I found my teacher,
רב ברוך
Who was
אשלג.
your teacher?
רב ברוך אשלג.
Rav Baruch Ashlag.
זהו מקובל באמת גדול
He was
ואחרון,
truly the
שלמדתי
the last great
אצלו
Kabbalist.
12 שנה.
And I studied with him 12 years
ועד שהוא נפטר.
until he passed away.
ואחרי שהוא
In
נפטר.
Israel.
Yes.
In,
ואחרי זה
And afterwards,
פתחתי כבר את הקבוצה
I
שלי,
started my group,
והתחלתי
and I began
הפצה.
to disseminate,
לא מיד,
to circulate. Well,
אחרי
not
כמה
immediately,
שנים.
but it took
But
a
what
few
was
years.
it about this teacher, Rabbi Anschlag,
מה
that
היה
was different
במורה
from
הזה
all the other Kabbalah
שהיה שונה בו
teachings?
מאחרים
What appealed to you about
בשיטות
this?
הקבלה.
הוא רצה גם כן לפרסם חוכמת
He
הקבלה
too
בכל
wanted
העולם.
to disseminate the wisdom of Kabbalah all
הוא
over the
דחף
world.
אותי להיות מורה.
He pushed me into being a teacher.
לידו כתבתי 3 הספרים
It
הראשונים
was
שלי.
by his side that I wrote my first 3 books.
והתחלתי לארגן קבוצות לידו.
And I started
הבאתי לו
building
תלמידים.
groups when I was with him. I brought him students.
התחלנו להתפתח.
We started developing.
הוא היה מורה ואני הייתי עוזר.
He was a teacher.
וכך
I was his
המשכתי
assistant.
ועוד ועוד.
And that's how I continued.
אחרי שהוא נפטר,
When he passed away,
לקחתי כל הדברים האלה בידיים שלי.
I took these things
והמשכתי
into my hand and
עם
I
הארכיון,
continued.
מהארכיון שלו
I
הדפסתי
used his
מה שהוא
archive
כתב
to
כספרים.
publish what he wrote as books.
והמשכתי עם תלמידים.
And I continued with teaching.
וגדלנו הרבה.
And we've grown.
עד היום, כמו שאמרתי, כ2
As
מיליון
I
תלמידים
said,
בכל
by now
העולם.
we have approximately 2 million students worldwide.
בינתיים עשיתי דוקטורט בפילוסופיה.
I also, in the meantime, completed my PhD in philosophy, professorship in ontology.
ומתעסק בקבלה.
And I
Again,
still engage
ontology,
in
philosophy, why? Looking for why.
למה? כן, החיפוש של הלמה.
למה לא? זה לא בגלל למה.
This time not because
זה
of the
כדי
why.
קצת להיכנס
This time it's because
למסגרת אקדמית.
It's in order to get into
בקשר
the academic
לאוניברסיטאות.
kind of framework
יוכל
and be in
להופיע
touch with the
שם,
university so I can
עכשיו אנחנו הגענו
appear
מכאן
there.
למיאמי,
So now we
אז
came to
נתתי
Miami
שם
here.
הרצאות.
So I gave 3 lectures in the
ומה-
FIU, the Florida International University.
וגם לסגל אקדמי שם, פרופסורים,
To the academic
וגם
staff
לסטודנטים,
and to the
וגם
students
לחוגים שונים.
and
ממש יום
different
שלם של הרצאות.
And your lectures center on Kabbalah?
קבלה ומשבר, קבלה ועולם המודרני,
Yeah, Kabbalah and crisis,
קבלה
Kabbalah
ומדע,
in today's world, Kabbalah and science,
קבלה וחינוך,
Kabbalah and education.
ואקולוגיה.
Ecology.
But the message sounds too simple.
אבל
Sounds
המסר
too
נשמע
simple.
פשוט מדי.
That we give up egoism, become
שאנחנו מוותרים על
altruistic,
האגואיזם, הופכים
and
לאלטרואיסטים,
understand that
ומבינים
we are linked, everyone is
שאנחנו
linked to
קשורים,
everyone
כולנו
else.
קשורים לכולם.
It sounds too simple.
נשמע
And
פשוט
Kabbalah
מדי.
is a very complex
וקבלה זה משהו
system.
מאוד מורכב.
אם אנחנו לוקחים בחשבון שכל
If you
הטבע
take into
שלנו
account that our whole
זה
nature
אגואיזם,
is egoism,
אז קבלה בעצם מדברת על כל הטבע.
then Kabbalah is talking about the
היא
whole of
יכולה
nature.
להסביר כל התופעות
It
של
can
החברה
explain
האנושית
every
הכי
phenomenon
קשות.
in the human
נראה לך שזה
society,
כל כך
the
פשוט.
hardest ones. You think
מפני
it's so
שאני
simple.
מדבר את זה בכמה מילים.
It's because I'm just
אבל
using a
כשאנחנו
few words to
נגיד
explain
מדברים
it.
על החינוך
But when you talk
ילדים,
about education of
אז
kids,
איך
for example,
לפתוח את הילד, איך
how do you develop a
איך להכין
child?
אותו
How do you
לחיים,
prepare a child for life?
ולעולם החדש.
For the new
מה
world?
לעשות אותו דבר עם המבוגרים.
How to do the same with
למה אנחנו
adults?
מתגרשים,
Why we
ולא
get
יכולים לסבול
divorced?
זה את
Why
זה,
we
זה
can't
גם
stand each
אגואיזם
other? That's
שלנו.
also our egoism.
למה אנחנו לא יודעים להתקשר
Why we
דרך
can't
הבנקים
communicate,
ועבודה וחברות
through
למיניהם
banks,
עכשיו,
at work,
בטרייד
all
הבינלאומי.
kinds of in international commerce now,
זה
why
גם כן
it's
בגלל
all
האגו
falling
שלנו
apart. It's
שלא
also
מסודר
because
לעולם
of our
הגלובלי,
egos
שאנחנו
that are
כולנו
not built for a global world.
אינדיבידואליסטים.
We're all individualistic.
למה אנחנו לא יכולים
Why we
להיות
can't
עם הטבע בצורה מאוזנת,
be in
ולקלקל
harmony
עם
with
הטבע?
nature.
זה גם כן האגו שלנו.
Again, it's our ego.
הכל זה אגו.
It's all ego.
למה אנחנו נכנסים בסמים?
Why we
למה
have
אנחנו
this
נמצאים
problem of drug abuse,
בדיפרסיה?
depression.
כל זה,
It's
המקור שלו,
the
היסוד
source
של
of everything, the
הכל,
foundation
זה האגו שלנו,
is our ego.
ושמגיע בזמן האחרון והורס
And lately,
אותנו,
it's destroying us.
ודורש מאיתנו
We're going to
טיפול.
come back to this and more, so stay with us. Dr. Laitman, one of the world's foremost Kabbalists, who has the solution for today's problems and today's crises. But back to Kabbalah itself. I had always heard that it was forbidden to study Kabbalah and dangerous until you were 40 and married and were well grounded in Torah and Tanakh. And that the ones who did it, they gave an example of 3 rabbis that did break this. One went crazy, one committed suicide, and the other became an apostate. And yet you make Kabbalah available for everybody Jewish, non-Jewish. They don't have to know a word of Hebrew. They don't have to learn how to read the Zohar. There's no commitment. There's no demand. There's no demand on the students, on your students.
When I started studying Kabbalah with my teacher, it was still forbidden for everyone. And within a few years, the world began to change. So then I brought him new students who were completely secular, out of Tel Aviv,
Madonna.
and he started teaching them.
No,
Madonna is a different story. She's not a Kabbalah student. That's a different Kabbalah altogether. That's business Kabbalah. So Kabbalists themselves, all throughout the generations, since the time of the Zohar, 2,000 years ago, all through the exile, prohibited people from studying Kabbalah. So they themselves publicized these things, that you could go crazy from Kabbalah. You can't study before you're 40. First, you have to be proficient in Mishnah and Gemara. It's only for a chosen few, etc. They themselves did it. Because humanity and the Jews themselves were in the time of the exile and didn't know what it was for. This thing had to be kept aside. So when I came to my teacher, it was still like that. Very kind of concealed way. Until the world appeared as a global world. And when our ego started getting in our way of coping with the world, our nature began to get in the way of our connection. Because on the one hand, we're all connected as a single global system. On the other hand, our nature is in our way of being connected correctly. So that contrast is what we feel as the current crisis. And then the wisdom of Kabbalah appears and tells us how we should get along properly together. So instead of a crisis, we'll have a good life.
So what you're saying, just to make it clear, is that it was forbidden, it was hidden, but because of the concept and the structure today of globalism.
There was globalism in Kabbalah. Like Abraham, he appealed to all the Babylonians. He wanted to bring all of them into it. They're the ones who wanted to build a tower up to the sky. Their egos. Yes? They're the ones who stopped understanding each other, became hateful of each other. So he discovered that the ego that erupted in ancient Babylon was in order for them to unite, despite that. And it's written that he built a tent and started bringing the men, and Sarah started bringing the women into it. Everyone, it's for everyone. And what did they start saying? Love your friend as yourself. That's what you have to come to. That's the whole wisdom of Kabbalah. The religions took it in order to, just say nice words, but no one actually actualizes it. The wisdom of Kabbalah corrects a person so that we can really come to unity among us. By that, we resolve all the problems. As part of our international academy, we have many Arab students as well.
I was just going to ask, you say it's really not a religion. Can Muslims be part of this?
Of course. Christians, Muslims. I give lectures to everyone. Moreover, they feel that it belongs to them as well. We have conferences everywhere in the world, not just in America. In Germany, many Germans study with us. A good, strong group in Germany. We had a congress in Turkey, a big one.
How long ago? A
year and a half, 2 years ago, 2009. I have many students, Palestinian students, Arab students.
כי השיטה הזאת
The
עוזרת
method
לקשר בין בני אדם.
helps people connect.
הם מתחילים להרגיש שהם שייכים
So they feel
לאנושות
that they
אחד,
belong to a
מעל
single
לכל הדתות.
humanity above any religion.
הדתות התחילו רק לפני
Religions
2000
started
שנה.
only 2,000 years ago or so.
וחומת הקבלה
But the
מגיעה
wisdom
לנו
of Kabbalah
מאברהם,
comes from
מאברהם.
Abraham, from Babylon.
וגם כן בכל הנביאים שלנו, בתנ"ך
And all of the
כתוב,
prophets
שאנחנו,
also write,
כי ביתי בית תפילה
yes,
יקרא לכל
my
העמים.
house will be a house of prayer for all the nations.
ונהרו עליו כל הגויים.
And all the nations shall flow unto him.
זה כתוב
It's written.
שהשיטה הזאת, איך לחבר
That the
בין כל
method of
העמים,
connecting all the
שהיא חומת
nations,
הקבלה, היא
which is the
בסופו של
method of
דבר
Kabbalah,
תתגלה.
will
ועכשיו
eventually
במשבר
appear.
הגלובלי,
And now,
בדיוק
when there's a
היא
global
מתגלה
crisis,
כדי
it's appearing
לצאת
in order
המשבר הזה,
to...
זה כאילו דוחף
This
אותנו
crisis
לחיבור.
kind of pushes us all into unity.
Because of the global crisis. We'll be back in a minute and hear more, especially how this is affecting Israel. Dr. Laitman, you live in Israel, you're based in Israel, your institute is based in Israel. Is your philosophy, is Kabbalah, having any influence on the social unrest in Israel? The uprisings, the tents in the streets.
כן, ודאי שכן, יש לנו תנועה גדולה.
Of course it does. We have a big movement,
חברתית
a social movement
בישראל,
in
שנקראת
Israel.
ערבות.
It's called arvut, guarantee, mutual guarantee.
שאנחנו מסבירים את
We explain
היסוד שלנו, איך
the
שאנחנו
foundation
צריכים להתחבר יחד,
of how we all have to connect.
אבל בהקדם החינוך,
But
שאנחנו
through
מחנכים את
education,
הבני אדם,
we educate
להיות
people
מקושרים נכון,
into being connected
בקשר הדדי,
properly
גם בינינו בתוך
a
ישראל,
reciprocal
בין
connection
היהודים,
within
וכל מיני
Israel, among Jews,
סוגי יהודים, שגם
and
ביניהם
different,
יש
you know,
מתח
factions
גדול
of
מאוד.
Jews, because there's a lot of tension
יש
between
מאתיופיה,
the
יש
groups too,
מרוסיה,
you know,
יש יהודים
the
מקומיים,
Jews from
וגם
Russia,
ביניהם הרבה סוגים,
from Ethiopia,
ומתחים לא קטנים.
Sabra, you know, and there are a
אז
lot of
קודם כל,
tensions.
איך להתחבר בינינו,
So first of all, we need to learn how to
וגם כן
connect among
להתחבר
us, as
עם
well as
הדרוזים, עם
connect with the
הצ'רקסים,
Jews and
עם
Cherkesses,
הערבים, עם
Arabs,
עם כל מיני
with
הסוגים,
every
שגם כן
kind,
חיים יחד
you know,
איתנו.
all the nationalities that live with us, the minorities.
בגלל
We want to
המשבר
show,
שקורה במזרח התיכון,
because of the crisis that's
וכל
happening in the Middle East,
הערב ספרינג הזה,
this Arab Spring and everything that's
אנחנו
happening,
רוצים להסביר
we want to
שאין
explain
יציאה ממנו,
that
זה
there
לא
is no
ייתן
way
שום דבר
out of
לאף
it.
אחד.
Nothing's going to come out
אני לא
of
יודע
it.
מי קרא לזה
Nothing good's going
ספרינג,
to come
זה
out
לא...
of it to everyone. I don't know whoever called it spring. It's the opposite of that.
בוודאי.
אנחנו רואים איך שזה כל מה
We can
שזה
see
קורה
what's
בלוב
happening, you know, in
ובמצרים,
Libya, in Egypt,
ועכשיו בסוריה,
now in Syria.
ועוד מעט
But
ירדן.
that all
And
seems
soon
to
there'll be
defeat
Jordan.
your premise that we are spiritually ascending.
אבל זה כאילו
In the 21st century.
נגד מה שאתה אומר, שאנחנו
לא,
עולים
לא, זה
רוחנית
גילוי
במאה ה-20.
הרע.
No, it's the disclosure or revelation of the bad.
אנחנו
of the
צריכים
evil.
לגלות את המחלה.
First, we need to
ולכן
to
עכשיו
see
היא מתגלה
the
יותר
illness.
ויותר,
So now it's
ומביאה את
appearing.
So do you
הסימנים
mean
של
things have to
השינוי.
get
brings out
worse?
its
Things
symptoms.
have to get catastrophic before they get better?
אז לפני שהדברים
Is that what
ישתפרו,
you're
הם צריכים
saying?
להיות קטסטרופה, הם צריכים להיות
לא
יותר גרוע.
קטסטרופה, אבל אנחנו צריכים
Not
לגלות שיש כאן
catastrophic,
מחלה.
but we have to
יש
discover
כאן
that there
בעיה.
is a problem here, an illness.
ולכן אנחנו נמצאים כתנועה רחבה מאוד
That's
בישראל.
why we have a big movement
אנחנו
in Israel.
עושים
Very
שולחנות
expensive.
העגולים.
We have these round
ממש
tables
ברחובות, בכיכרים.
in city squares and everywhere.
ואנחנו מזמינים לשם חברי כנסת.
And we invite parliament members
מכל השכבות
and
האוכלוסייה.
people from every
ערבים
realm of the
ויהודים,
population,
וכולם
Arabs, Jews, Druze,
סביב השולחן הזה אנחנו
and everyone sit together
מדברים על
around this
הבעיות
round
שבישראל,
table, talking about
איך
the
אנחנו
problems in
יוצאים
Israel,
מזה,
how we can
איך
work it
אנחנו
out,
פועלים בעד או נגד
whether or
המדינה
not we work
הפלסטינאית
for or
שרוצים
against the Palestinian country that's being debated now,
ואנחנו מעלים את הדברים האלה, הכל
Palestinian state,
לקראת
and
צדק
we bring it all
חברתי
up
וחיבור החברתי.
toward social justice and social unity.
שאין לנו ברירה. אנחנו רואים שכל
We have no
הפרוטקציוניזם
choice. We
לרעתנו,
see that
רק
protectionism,
החיבור.
isolationism is against us, and only bonding works.
והציבור
And the public
שומע
is
Well,
attentive.
this is a country,
They become
talk
receptive.
about bonding, where
אתה מדבר פה על
the Hilanim, the non-religious, are hostile to the religious.
חילונים ודתיים
Yeah, religious and
Are you
Orthodox.
getting them together in Israel?
אתה מחבר אותם, את כל הסוגים?
מעליהם, כוודאי.
It's all above them.
כל אחד נשאר בטבע שלו.
Everyone remains in his life,
בחיים שלו. כל אחד
in his
נשאר
ordinary
בהרגלים
life,
משלו,
in his
traditions,
in his habits.
ומעל זה
But
אנחנו מחוברים, כי
above
אנחנו בני
that,
אדם,
we
ואין
become
לנו
connected
ברירה
because we're
אחרת.
humans and we have no other choice.
This is your emphasis. We're all human, we're all in it together,
אנחנו גרנו בזה ביחד.
and that's the premise of everything
וזה
that
הנחת
you
היסוד של
talk
כל
about.
מה שאתה מדבר עליו.
כמו שכתוב בתורה,
As
ואהבת
it's written in the
לרעך
Torah,
כמוך,
love your
והגדול
neighbor
בתורה,
as yourself. That's the great rule, the general rule of the Torah.
להיות מעל האגו.
Being above the ego.
אין מה לעשות.
There's no way around it.
זה חובה, זה בעצם כל התורה.
It's a must. It's the whole of the Torah.
וחייבת לכסות כל העולם.
And it must cover the whole
אנחנו
world.
בזה פועלים בצורה כמו ששם כתוב.
We work by that we work just according to what's written there. Kabbalah only explains what's actually written in the Torah and realizing it.
What's the attitude of the religious establishment
הגישה של הממסד
to you and your followers? Do they accept you?
הם מטפלים באנשים דתיים.
They deal with
בחיים
religious
הדתיים.
people, with the religious life. Those who want to be religious and follow the customs of everyday behavior of religious. It's got nothing to do with us. They don't touch us. We're not in touch with them.
בין התלמידים שלי ישנם ודאי
Among my
גם
students,
אנשים דתיים.
there are religious people, of course,
כל אחד
too,
הוא מתעסק
but everyone
בחיים שלו.
has his own life.
היהודי יכול לקיים את
A
המצוות
Jew
שלו ואת
can
התפילות
keep
שלו.
his commandments and his
המוסלמי,
prayers.
מצוות
A
שלו
Muslim,
ותפילות
his
שלו.
prayers
גם
and
כן.
commandments,
ולא
and
חשוב,
same
כתוב
goes for the
בחוכמת
Christian.
הקבלה,
It's written in
שאפילו אחרי
Kabbalah
כל
that even
תיקון העולם,
after the
כל
end of
אחד
the
יכול
correction of
להישאר
the world,
בדתו,
everyone
בדת
may
שלו.
still remain in his religion.
כי דת זה תרבות.
Because religion is culture.
תרבות, איך שאנחנו עושים את זה בבית.
It's
Culture meaning
many
the way we
cultures.
behave at home.
Religion is many cultures. It's pretty hard
הרבה
to
תרבויות.
get through.
ושכל
Is it
אחד
hard to
יהיה, כל
get
הדתות
through?
האלה והתרבויות האלו זה מאברהם.
All of these cultures and religions come from Abraham.
זה הכל החליט לקיים בבית את התרבות ביתי.
It's all about the kind of culture you keep at
אם
home.
מעל זה, על כל הפשעים
If,
יחסי אהבה,
above all that, yes, if love covers all transgressions,
אז לא בעיה
then it's not a
שאנחנו
problem
כולנו...
for you
Well,
to...
the Christians had that
לנוצרים היה את זה.
unconditional love of everybody, and it's not working. Why should it
לא
work
עבד.
with you?
אז למה זה שיעבוד אצלך?
זה יעבוד אצלנו מפני
It's going to work
שאנחנו
for us because
לא הורסים את האגו.
we don't ruin the ego.
אלא אנחנו פועלים יחד עמו.
We work along with it.
אנחנו מלמדים
We teach,
מטעם חוכמת הקבלה איך להיות
from the
קשורים
perspective of Kabbalah, we
בינינו
teach
מעל
how to be
האגו
connected
שלנו.
among us
שכל אחד
above our
אומנם
egos.
נשאר
So
בכל
everyone
הדתות
remains
ואמונות
in his own religion and
ותרבויות
belief system and culture.
משלו. יחד מזה
And at
אנחנו
the
חייבים
same
להיות
time,
בקשר הדדי.
we all have to be in this mutual connection.
כמו כל אחד באופי אחר, ובכל
Just
זאת
like
אנחנו
everyone may
מוצאים
have a different
בינינו שפה
character,
משותפת.
but we still can find a common language.
Okay, we'll come back in a minute to the final segment of this topic of Dr. Laitman with how precisely you're going about it. Dr. Laitman, Kabbalah sounds abstractly like a perfect tool to fix the world. But the world is not being fixed. And many philosophies with a similar goal of oneness, of universality, and we are all one, are not getting through to people. Why would Kabbalah work and the others do not?
אין מדע בעולם
There is no science in the
שלומדת
world
על טבע האדם יותר עמוק
that
מקבלה.
teaches the
כי
human
היא
nature
לומדת אותו,
more than,
את האדם,
deeper than Kabbalah.
עד
Because
כמה שהוא
Kabbalah
אגואיסט,
teaches us how
מה
egoistic
הדחפים
we
שלו
are,
הפנימיים,
our internal pulses,
ומציע לנו
drives, and it
פתרון
offers us
לטבע האדם.
a solution to
פשוט
the human
מאוד.
nature, which is very simple.
בעצם.
In fact,
ולכן נראה שהיא קצת יותר נאיבי.
that's why it
כל
seems a
ה-
bit naive,
כל הסיפור שלי.
the
כל
whole
העמדה
story,
שלי.
is my explanation.
It does seem naive, it does.
זה אכן נראה נאיבי קצת.
כן, אני מבין את זה.
I understand. In fact, the wisdom of Kabbalah says we need to organize such an influence on people using the media so that they are influenced through the proper relations that we present using the media. That will make them change. Because a person is a result of the environment. Just like when we put our kids into school or we choose their friends because we put them in a certain environment because by that they grow and change. So we need to create an environment for grown-ups as well. And that all depends on the media. If we have if we, with our responsibility and the seriousness that we relate to it through the media, to the world's problems, to the financial crisis that we have now, because the financial crisis is also a projection of our egos.
The financial crisis that you predicted, didn't you?
Yes, of course. We've been talking about it maybe 10 or 11 years ago. No one would listen. They're still not listening to what we're saying about what will happen in a few years. But we still reveal it. So what we need to do is change the environment through the media and through everything that affects a person. And then people will change. And that's what we have to come to. We also do it with our kids. We have schools that we build, where we build a special environment for them. And they come out completely different kids. There are no fights, no drugs, no special problems. Kids that at 13 or 14 are going into university. And we can see that they grow completely differently. And it's all done because of a different atmosphere in a classroom. It's not like an ordinary classroom. They sit in circles, they communicate. The teacher is with them in the circle. They go out on outings to get to know the world, into factories, into all kinds of places, banks. They're allowed to know life. And then they talk about it and write about it. And reports.
You encourage the kids to experience all facets of society directly, and then talk about it after, rather than keep them isolated in the bubble of a schoolroom.
No, we don't isolate them, on the contrary. And they build for themselves. They have their own courthouses. If something is wrong with them, they sentence and judge and research what happens to them. If something is wrong or right, we work constantly with psychologists and sociologists. Education is basically our issue. Education for kids and for grown-up kids. We too have something to learn. And I'm certain that we will understand the kind of solution, the only solution that we have here for every problem in the world. And that we can show people how to resolve the crisis, which is only now beginning. It's not the end. It will not be over until we change and adapt ourselves to the global and integral system that we have gone into. Nature is closing in, wrapping us all together in a single sphere, and we won't be able to escape from each other. So we have no choice but to know how to live together globally. And there is no other method except that which teaches us how to rein the ego, how to use it, but correctly, so that we all find ourselves as a cell in the overall organism. Otherwise, we're in opposition to nature. Nature is round, it's one, it's closed. It's all in harmony, in sync, except the human society. We've come to a point that the human society must also become
Dr. Laitman, I want to thank you. Your message is inspiring. Your hopes are inspirational, and the message of Kabbalah for all people, and not just Jews, is part of the oneness that will save us eventually, I hope. I want to thank you for being here.